Hello, my name's David Seaman, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne. This is an independent England football supporters podcast. I hope I find you well. The most recent episode that came your way was the senior men's Greece and Ireland review. A couple of fixtures that rounded off 2024 for them. Not a bad year. A Euro final, promotion back to League A of the Nations League, a new manager. Well, that episode is still available at your podcast provider of choice. This time around, we are taking a look at the Lionesses, who are once again in action. They too have their last fixtures of the year. And I'll touch on what those have been in the moment. But coming up, they face the USA at Wembley on Saturday the 30th of November. Then they travel up to Bramall Lane, Sheffield, to play Switzerland on the 3rd of December. Shortly I'll be chatting with Rich Laverty about those two games and the squad, so stay tuned for that. But 2024, well, it's been a bit of an up and down year for the Lionesses, especially after reaching the World Cup final last year. They began the year with a couple of friendlies over in Spain. You may remember they beat Austria 7-2, then Italy 5-1. In April, qualifying for next year's Euros in Switzerland began. They were drawn, it's fair to say, in a tough group with Sweden, Ireland and France. It began with a sticky 1-1 draw at home to Sweden, I seem to remember. That was the game I went to, which was followed by a 2-0 away win over in Ireland. Things looked to be going well until they lost to France at St James's Park in Newcastle. However, they reversed that scoreline over in St Etienne a week or so later, and we were juggling second and third place with Sweden. Then there was a 2-1 win against Ireland at Norwich, and then we finished the group away to Sweden with a disappointing performance that ended 0-0. However, the job was achieved. We had finished second in the group, a point behind France, and we had qualified for next year's Euros. Then there was their most recent matches. They were last month. A 4-3 loss to Germany at Wembley, and that was followed by a 2-1 win over South Africa at Coventry. And it has been well documented that neither were great performances. So with these two fixtures approaching, they'll be looking to change that. So let's take a look at the squad that Sarina Wiegman has announced. Goalkeepers, 3 of them. Mary Earps, Hannah Hampton and Anna Morehouse. In defence, Millie Bright, Lucy Bronze, Jess Carter, Gabby George, Alex Greenwood, Maya Letitia, Esme Morgan, Millie Turner and Leah Williamson. Midfielders. Now we have a couple of new players to the squad, to the setup. I'll touch on those in a moment. But the first one is Laura Blindkill-Brown. There's Grace Clinton, Fran Kirby. Ruby Mace is also a new player to the squad. Jess Park, Georgia Stanway and Kira Walsh. And then up front, 5 players. Aggie Beaver-Jones, Chloe Kelly, Beth Mead, Jess Naz and Alessia Russo. Now, mentioning this squad before the last set of fixtures of the WSL are played before the international break. So the WSL fixtures being played over the weekend, 23rd and 24th of November. Let's see if any of those players pull out for whatever reason. But I mentioned the 2 new faces to the squad. Laura Blindkill-Brown. Now, she was the Young Player of the Year at Aston Villa for a couple of seasons before she made a move to Manchester City at the start of this year. She scored on her debut against West Ham. Now, she has a Danish mother, hence the blind killed in her name, but she has pledged her future to England and has already represented the under-17s, 19s and 23s. And Ruby Mace is the other new face to the squad. Like Brian Kilde-Brown, has also represented the under-17s, under-19s and 23s. She's currently at Leicester City. She moved from Manchester City earlier in the year, following a loan period at Leicester. Now, there is one other player who hasn't earned a cap in the squad, goalkeeper Anna Morehouse. But she was in the squad last month in October for the games against Germany and South Africa, but didn't make the pitch. It's also worth mentioning that Anna Morehouse has won the NWSL Championship over in America with Orlando Pride over the weekend. So congratulations to her. So just taking a look at the squad, it's won with 138 goals across it and 865 caps. And it has an average age of 26.1. The oldest player in the squad is Lucy Bronze at 33 years old. She's also the highest capped in the squad with 126 caps. The youngest is Grace Clinton, just 21, but already earned herself 4 caps. One for the... I think it's fair to say we all know she is one for the future. Beth Mead, 33 goals, is the highest goal scorer within the squad. It's a 24-player squad. There are 4 from Chelsea, Manchester United and Manchester City, 3 from Arsenal, and 1 each from Paris Saint-Germain, Orlando Pride, Washington Spirit, Gotham FC, Leicester, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Brighton and Tottenham Hotspur. And I'm guessing some of the familiar names that you may be used to with the Lionesses that aren't there. Lauren Hemp is injured. Ella Toon has got a calf injury. No Lauren James or Neve Charles from Chelsea. And Lucy Parker as well has got an ankle injury. So before we speak with Rich about that squad and about some of those players, let's just take a quick look at the history of both of these upcoming opponents. Starting with the USA, this will be the 20th meeting between the two sides. And unfortunately, we don't have the best record against them. But to be honest, they have been one of the most successful women's sides in the game, really. Basically, we've played 19 times together. We've won 5, drawn 2 and lost 11. The most recent meeting was only back in 2022. Once again at Wembley, it was a friendly. The Lionesses winning 2-1. You may remember Lauren Hemp and a Georgia Stanway penalty, both in the first half. They were either side of a Sophia Smith strike. You may also remember it was a game where Trinity Rodman had one chalked off by VAR for offside. And then later on in the game, the Americans thought they had a penalty, but the referee once again had to be guided by VAR and it was overruled. And on to Switzerland. It's fair to say our record against them is considerably better against them than the one we have against the USA. We have met the Swiss on 13 occasions, winning 11 of them and only drawing twice. We have yet to lose to them. We last met in 2022. It was the last warm-up game before the home winning Euros. We would win 4-0 over in Zurich. Back in 1977, the girls actually beat them 9-1. So maybe based on previous, looking at the USA game with all the stats, that appears to be a tough one. The Switzerland one, well, that could be quite entertaining. Just taking a look at the current FIFA rankings, well, the USA, they are top. We are second, and the Swiss, well, they're in 25th place. So with those two games fast approaching, delighted to welcome back to the show, Rich Laverty. Hi, Rich.
Hi, mate. Okay.
I am very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, all good.
Good.
Trying to warm up
Yeah. You up there in the north, you're a bit chilly of late.
Yep, definitely.
Well, you keep warm. Two exciting games coming up, hopefully. When we sort of cast our mind back last month to the games, I think everyone was getting excited for the Germany game and maybe not so much about the South Africa one, with the greatest of respect, but they didn't really hit maybe the heights that we were hoping for. Do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't actually get to see the South Africa game. I saw the Germany match. I watched the highlights of the South Africa game. It's been a little bit of a long-standing thing now. It feels like ever since the Euros, to be honest. I think I've said this before, whether on this podcast or others, that I think even at the World Cup last year, I didn't think England were brilliant, which I know is probably not the worst thing in the world to say about a team that reached the final, because if you can reach a final sort of playing as not sloppily as England did, but there were definitely some performances where they probably got away with it a little bit. And listen, they've had a few, where it's like when you get to friendlies, you get a few knocks and some players aren't available, and obviously things look a little bit different. And I think it's the same for this camp as well, obviously with Lauren Hemp and Ella Toone and Lauren James. But yeah, it was Germany was probably a bit of an alarm bell, given it was Germany's first game under a new head coach. And, they too obviously didn't have the greatest World Cup 12 months ago. They had a better Olympics in the summer, but yeah, they sort of hit the ground running. And yeah, there's a balance being lost. I mean, I think defensively, I'm still a little bit left questioning why someone like Alex Greenwood doesn't play. I think in form, she's the best England have at the minute. I think obviously having a left footer back there adds that little bit of balance as well. Because we don't have a lot of that on the left side. There still really isn't that natural left back.
Yeah.
And certainly then not the left side of defence. Obviously Leah and Millie are both right footers. So yeah, it was a little bit all over the shot. And listen, maybe it's to be expected. Obviously, Leah's still very much working her way back. And I thought actually for Arsenal, last week, she was very good. She looked probably as good as she has in a while. Millie was obviously out, a lot of the first half of 2024, and it takes its toll. So,
of course,
maybe we're asking a little bit too much for given their friendly games, and they are for experimenting and working. But yeah, there doesn't seem to quite be the coherence that there was between the attack and the defence that there was at the Euros. I still think it's a little bit. It's like two parts of the team are working, separately from each other, and it hasn't quite clicked back into gear yet. But I mean, listen, it wasn't a disaster. They look good going forward. They created a lot of chances, and yeah, it's what it's about. We probably said it the same building up to the Euros and the World Cup. What matters is what happens when you get there. And to be fair to England, they've been in the final of the last two major tournaments. So if they do that again in Switzerland, I don't think we'll be arguing too much.
No, not at all. And I guess with a defeat, there's always something to dissect with it and look at and see what you can do going forward. Whereas when you're on a run of however many games they were a year or so ago, it was like, well, what do you learn from keeping winning? I'm sure there are things that you learn, but yeah, a defeat you can sort of pick apart a little bit. But with the squad, there's a couple of new faces, which I think obviously with the players that have withdrawn for whatever reason they may be, it's a good opportunity to blood some new faces. What do we know about Laura? Is it Blind Killed Brown and Ruby Mace?
Yeah, I think it's good. Obviously that's why the under-23s is there to keep providing, international football for these players that are trying to bridge the gap. It's a big step between the 19s and the first team if you don't have that 23s. And obviously they're having competitive fixtures now with this sort of, I think it's still sort of technically a friendly tournament, but this elite league that the 23s are playing in now, where they're playing Norway home and away, Sweden home and away, France, Spain, and getting really good competitive matches for those players that are sort of past the 19s and maybe not ready for the first team. I think Laura is a natural succession in terms of that midfield. And it's an area we've said for many years England tend to be a little bit light, and obviously Ella Toone being out in that number 10 role, Lauren James being out, opened up a little spot, and she's been doing well at Man City when she's had the chances. Obviously, they paid a lot of money for her at the start of the year to get her from Villa, and I saw her score last week actually in the Champions League against Hammarby. She got the opening goal, and she's growing. So yeah, that didn't surprise me. Ruby was an interesting one because she's obviously very highly rated. Like, she's been around the top clubs. Obviously taking a step back to go and play at Leicester, and obviously they're having a bit of a struggle this season, but she's very versatile. She can play at the back. She can play sort of the holding mid, which again, we've said a lot over the years, we don't really have that natural player to step in if anything happens to Kira Walsh. So yeah, like I said, it's friendlies. It's a good opportunity. If there's opportunities in the squad, like you say, there's 4 or 5 missing through injury in various positions, particularly that midfield. And yeah, even if they don't play, get them around the squad and get them integrated. If Serena thinks they're potentially players that can be there for the long term. But yeah, I think with call-ups like that, when you're talking about friendly matches, I think it's a win-win. Whether people think whether they deserve it, whether they don't deserve it, it's a good opportunity for them. I think Laura certainly does. I'd be lying if I said I'd seen enough of Leicester to make a fair call on Ruby, but like I said, she's very highly rated with the clubs that she's been at, and she's always been around the England youth team. So they've obviously seen something in her this season, despite Leicester's struggles, that she can add something. So yeah, I think it's a win-win, mate. Serena gets to have a look at them, and if they feature, then even better for them.
Absolutely. Just going back to the back line, the goalkeepers. I know Mary Earps, obviously she transferred to PSG a while back. Hannah Hampton played against Germany. And Mary Earps returned. Do you think Serena Weigmann is maybe reassessing the goalkeeper situation?
Yeah, I think Hannah has a real claim now to be the number one. It's interesting how football works out. I think Chelsea signed Hannah probably earlier than maybe they would have done under normal circumstances. I think they knew Ann-Katrin Berger was going to be gone by the end of the season, and they needed a long-term successor, someone that could potentially be in there for the next, decade, theoretically, in terms of age and talent. But, circumstance dictated that Hannah ended up with more games than maybe people thought. I mean, there was even talk when she went into Chelsea that she was going to go straight on loan and play elsewhere. And listen, she took her opportunity a little bit like Cara Keating last season, Ellie Roebuck a few years back. The thing with the goalkeeper is, if they get injured, there's only one person to come in for them. And if you take that opportunity, which Hannah did, combined with Mary, I think it's a tough one with Mary. Like, I think she still had a good year, but I think her couple of years before that was so good, it almost probably felt like a bit of a come down, even though it was a little bit like what I said about Lucy Bronze a few years ago. Like, I still think Lucy Bronze performs at a very high level, and I think she's been very, very good for Chelsea this season. But because she was probably the best in the world at one point, it feels like you've come down a level.
Right, I see.
Even if you're performing at a sort of normal, natural level. Like, I think that's what happened with Mary Earps. She had such an unbelievable couple of years that this feels like a come down, even though she's still performing very well. And obviously she's made that move to PSG. But yeah, I mean, Hannah's not doing anything wrong. So I'll be interested to see. I mean, I'm sure she might split them again, but I think you're probably looking at maybe who plays the USA game as a bit of a nod to maybe who she's looking at as the number one. Listen, Serena values experience. We know that as well. So listen, it wouldn't be a shock if she stuck with Mary once we get to the tournament. We'll see how the season pans out. But yeah, there's competition. I mean, Cara can't even get in the squad now. Obviously, Anna Morehouse is in there, who, to be fair, has had a great year with Orlando. She's broken some records over there for clean sheets. So yeah, a lot of competition when you think Cara's now back down in the 23s, and hopefully still got Ellie Roebuck to come back in at some point. So yeah, it's not the worst problem to have.
No, not at all. Well, you mentioned the USA. They are the first opponents in this international break. Emma Hayes is, of course, their manager. We all know about Emma Hayes. USA are, well, they're constant winners of tournaments. They are, of course, the current Olympic winners. This isn't going to be a stroll, is it?
No, I was a little bit disappointed to see the squad the other day and that Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman and Mal Swanson are not in it. I would have, not so much, not from a selfish point of view, because I don't think I'll be at the game, but I'd have liked to see England's defence, with some of the issues that we're talking about at the minute. Really, listen, I'm not saying they won't be tested by the players that are in the USA squad because they've got as much depth as anyone in the world, but yeah, I'd have really liked to have seen them go up against that trio, that were unbelievable at the Olympic Games. All three have had unbelievable years for both the US and their respective clubs in NWSL. So, yeah, a little bit. I think they're both probably looking at it going, phew, because I think England will be looking at those three going, thank God. And I think USA will probably be pretty happy to not see Lauren Hemp and Lauren James and Ella Toone. But like I said, they're friendlies, they're opportunities for other players to come in. So we'll see. Obviously, yeah, it's Emma Hayes and the Olympic gold medalist. So it's always going to be a great game.
What sort of effect? I mean, it's clear that she's had a winning effect straight away with winning the gold medal, but you probably know more than most. What sort of effect has she had over there on the American team and the American public?
I think the impression I got during the Olympics when talking to some of their players before games, after games, was that she just re-added sort of the belief. She got the basics going again, and I just re-energized them. I think was the view that I got, mate. To be honest with you, Emma's very good at that. She's a good coach, but I think we know she's a good motivator. She says a lot of right things. She's got her buzzwords and her cliches and things like that, and yeah, I think she went in there with a lot of enthusiasm. I think she refound her energy after Chelsea. I think we all knew she was a bit worn out towards the end. And I think she went over there really reinvigorated. And I think she said it potentially after the final in a press conference. I can't remember, but she sort of said, she picked them up at the right time. She knew she had a good team, but they were kind of at their lowest. They'd had a really bad World Cup, as bad a World Cup as the US had in a long time. So yeah, I think she did go in there at the right time, just as that previous era was ending, and these new young players now, not just Smith and Rodman and Swanson, but you've seen even like Lily Johannes, the teenager from Ajax, and she's been involved, and yeah, I think it was probably a match made in heaven, mate, to be honest.
Right. Well, but before we move on to Switzerland and just having a look at that, how was the Olympics? How did that all go for you?
Yeah, it was good, mate. Feels like a lifetime ago.
It does, doesn't it?
It was only a few months. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was the first tournament. I don't actually, since joining the Substack life last year, I don't really go to games much anymore. It's not a big part of my job. I'm not a news writer. I do a lot of features and sort of bigger picture projects. And so it was kind of nice to get out, with being in France, it wasn't too hard to get to, and it wasn't too hard to get around, and wasn't actually a huge amount of media there, apart from the last couple of games. The final was very busy, but obviously not following England around, or Team GB, obviously, it was pretty good access to the teams and the players and some of the storylines. So yeah, it was good. There was some, really big moments, big stories. I did the France-Canada game when France won in the last minute. Obviously, the first game after the whole Spygate thing. And
yes.
Yeah, I did I'm trying to think of the games now. The Spain-Colombia. I did that game when Colombia were 2-0 up. Spain came back to win 3-2. Did the bronze medal match when Ann-Katrin Berger saved the penalty in the last minute from Alexia, and did the final as well. So, yeah, there was some really good games, good moments, and yeah, it's only a few months ago, but it feels like a lifetime already.
Yeah. Well, and moving on to Switzerland, they're the second opponents. That one's up your way, isn't it? Bramall Lane. Why, you know your way around there. What do we know for Switzerland? Obviously, being Euro hosts next year, they haven't got any, or they won't have played any games of any note. They'll just be playing friendlies, won't they?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what they're like. I don't know if I'll get to that game either, despite the fact, like you say, it's just down the road. But I'm going to try and do the 23s in Doncaster the night before, so that's right. A bit more. I'll try and sort of go and do the things other people aren't doing at the moment. But yeah, I'd be interested to see where Switzerland are at because, like you say, they're the hosts, and there's always that little bit of extra pressure, especially when you look at the last two hosts of the tournament have both won it. I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting that from Switzerland, but yeah, they've put a bit into it, mate. I mean, they've got some good young players. You look at the squad, they've got some young players that are playing in top teams. They've got a young girl that's joined Barcelona in the summer, and yeah, they seem to be doing something right. I mean, obviously they're next door to Germany, and a lot of players, go out and into the German league, which is obviously one of the top leagues in Europe. So there's a few players over here now in England as well. And I mean, they hired Pia Sundhage as their head coach last year. And obviously she's massively experienced,
Absolutely.
Been at Olympics, been at World Cups, won major tournaments and, potentially the right kind of person they need at the moment. So yeah, I'd be interested because they're one of those countries, a little bit similar to the men's game, I guess. They're always there. They always qualify. That you always see Switzerland at a major tournament, but they'll go out in the group, or they might get the second round, and then they'll go out, to the first top team they face. I think the Euros it's a building block for them. No one's expecting them to go out and win it or, get to the semi-finals probably even, but it puts them on the map a little bit within their own country, among their own fans, among the Swiss people that may not, be as aware of women's football as others. And like I said, they're definitely developing some good young players. So, it's a game I would expect England to win, but I think for Switzerland, like you say, obviously not having competitive games, etc., it's a little bit bigger picture for them. And yeah, a team like England they might be playing Germany this camp as well. I can't remember. They've definitely got another game against somebody. But yeah, that's what it's about now, isn't it? For them, it's getting the test that they need to see where they're at ahead of hosting the tournament.
Yeah. What I had only noticed recently was in the build-up to the tournament, the Lionesses and various other teams that will be competing in it will be playing Nations League games almost right up until, well, I say kick-off to the tournament, but I think it'll be a month from the last game of the Nations League until the Euros start. It seems quite a congested fixture list.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's longer than teams got at the Olympics. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I think some teams were playing Nations League games about 10 days before the Olympics started last year, which was crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing battle, isn't it? It's an ongoing discussion in the women's game, the scheduled. And I'll be honest with you, mate, I don't know how we keep managing to sort of mess it up as we are, because there's nowhere near as many games. We know that, there's nowhere near as many WSL games and things like that, like the Premier League, they play 38 games, and the WSL, you play 22. So I'm a little bit baffled as to how we keep having these moments where we're going, oh, there's a Nations League game, a few weeks before the Euros. And I'm just like, well, how are we not finding more slots to get things in? Like, the men manage it, they've got double the games that we have when you put the extra FA Cup games, League Cup, Champions League, all of them have more games than the women's equivalent. So yeah, it's a little bit baffling to me, mate, to be honest with you, but it's, it seems to be a constant conversation point. So we're obviously not getting, and listen, I think they're going to keep adding things out that, they want these Club World Cups and things like that. They're already talking about expanding the major tournaments again, like they've just expanded the World Cup. So, and they seem to want to do it again. So yeah, I don't know, mate. They don't seem to be able to get they don't seem to be able to get things sorted, which confuses me a little bit.
Yeah, it's a shame if they, because I mean, what with the recent injuries that players have experienced in the women's game, you're led to kind of think that maybe that it will become more of an issue with the more games crammed in, which is something we don't want to see. Listen, Rich, thank you very much for joining us once again. Gordon, you mentioned your Substack a moment ago. Just remind us where we can find that.
So it's in my Twitter handle, X handle, whatever you want to call it these days. I haven't jumped over yet to the new place like everybody else has. I need to get around to it. It feels like that's where everybody's going at the moment. Yeah. So, but yeah, just richlaverty.substack.com. That's where I'm at these days. Have sort of moved away from the news and, match reporting and things like that. So it's slightly bigger picture stuff, features, interviews, stories, things like that. So yeah, don't really get to games anymore. I'll try and probably get down to the Bramall Lane one if I can. Obviously, it's just down the road. So, but yeah, sort of realise that I'm going for the sake of it these days because I'm not really doing match reports or anything. Right,
yeah. But any big stories on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I'm doing some bits at the minute. Like I tend to focus more now on outside of England. I think looking at the next World Cup and countries that are developing around that. But yeah, just things that pop up, mate. For me, I write about things that interest me and I'm quite fortunate to be in a position where being freelance like I have been for the last 10 years, I sort of can write about what I want to write whilst working on, other projects, like got the top 100 going on again at the minute.
Yeah.
Like we're right in the middle of that. That'll be out in the next couple of weeks. So like I said, it's sort of more the bigger picture stuff, and I probably feel quite fortunate the way the game has grown that I'm a little bit less compelled to be across the news and transfers and things that I never really had the passion for, because now there's so many great journalists and writers, there's so many people across the day-to-day, the squad announcements and the friendlies and things like that I can go off and sort of do what I enjoy, really.
Sounds good. Rich, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, we'll catch up again at some point.
Yep, no worries, mate. Pleasure.
Thank you to Rich there for his time. Always enjoy chatting. As he mentioned, you can find him over on Twitter at Rich J Laverty and also over on Substack. Now, before I leave you, we mentioned there about the Lionesses fixtures in the run-up to the Euros next year. They're in the Nations League. Now, we have been drawn in League A Group 3. Now, the fixture dates have since been announced. Let me run quickly through those and you'll understand what I mean about them being so close to the Euros. 21st of February, we are away to Portugal. Then a few days later, on the 26th, we host Spain. Now, this has been announced as being played at Wembley. Then in April, we have a double header. Home, then away to Belgium. On the 4th, then the 8th. The away fixture already been announced as being played at the Den Dreth in Leuven. Well, you may remember we recently played Belgium in 2023. Once again, that was in the Nations League. Now, the last set of fixtures, the 30th of May, we host Portugal. Then we finish with an away game to Spain on the 3rd of June. Now, this is all before the Euros kick off in Switzerland on the 2nd of July. So that's what I was kind of getting at, that there is a possible fixture congestion in the run-up to the Euros next year. There will be a semi-final for the Nations League in October and a final in December. Of course, nearer the time, I'll take a look at those games in more detail. Back to the USA and the Switzerland games. If you're going to either of them or both, safe journey. Enjoy them. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can follow the show on social media. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. And also now, as Rich mentioned, Blue Sky. If you've not heard of that, it's a new alternative to Twitter. Who knows if it'll take off in the way that many are hoping, but you can go find the show there too. Just search 3 Lions Podcast. Also, should you want to, you can contribute to the show's monthly hosting over at kofi.com/Three Lions Podcast, ko-fi.com/Three Lions Podcast. Any support you give is really appreciated. I will be back with you very soon, once again, taking a look at our national football team in some way, shape or form. I hope you can join me for it. So until then, take care of yourselves. Cheers.